The morning sun cast long shadows across the military academy's training grounds as Maria Santos adjusted her worn combat boots. At 19, she looked nothing like the other cadets. While they stood tall and broad-shouldered, she appeared small and fragile, her uniform hanging loose on her petite frame. The other recruits whispered behind her back, wondering how someone so delicate had even been accepted into the elite military program. Maria had heard the whispers countless times. "She's too weak," they would say. "She'll never make it through basic training." Some even questioned whether she belonged there at all. But Maria had something they couldn't see, a fire burning inside her that had been forged through years of hardship and determination. She grew up in a small village where survival meant being tougher than you looked. Her father had been a soldier who died when she was just 8 years old. Her mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table while raising Maria and her 2 younger brothers. From an early age, Maria learned that strength wasn't always about size or muscle. Sometimes it was about refusing to give up when everyone expected you to fail. The academy was her chance to honor her father's memory and prove that dedication could overcome any physical limitation. She had scored the highest marks on the written entrance exam and passed all the physical requirements, though just barely. The instructors had reluctantly accepted her, but their expressions made it clear they expected her to wash out within the first month. General Harrison was different from the other instructors. He was a legend in the military, a man who had served in 3 different conflicts and earned more medals than any other officer in recent history. His reputation was built on being tough but fair, demanding excellence from everyone under his command. He had trained hundreds of soldiers, and many credited him with saving their lives through his rigorous preparation. But Maria noticed something else about the general. Unlike the other instructors who seemed to write her off immediately, he watched her carefully during training exercises. His steel-gray eyes would follow her movements, studying how she compensated for her smaller size with speed and technique. She couldn't tell if he was looking for weaknesses to exploit or strengths to develop. The first few weeks of training were brutal for everyone, but especially challenging for Maria. While other cadets struggled with the mental pressure, she battled both physical and psychological obstacles. During hand-to-hand combat training, she was frequently paired with much larger opponents who assumed the match would be easy. Some held back, treating her like she might break. Others saw it as an opportunity to show off their strength. Maria preferred the ones who didn't hold back. She learned more from being challenged than from being coddled. Her strategy was simple: use speed and intelligence to overcome raw power. She studied each opponent's habits, looking for patterns and weaknesses. While they relied on brute force, she developed techniques that turned their strength against them. The other cadets began to notice that Maria wasn't as easy to defeat as they had assumed. In fact, she was winning more matches than she was losing. This didn't make her popular. Some of the male cadets felt embarrassed to be beaten by someone they considered physically inferior. Rather than respecting her skill, they began to resent her presence even more. "She's just lucky," some would mutter after losing a sparring match. Others claimed she was using cheap tricks or that the instructors were going easy on her because she was a woman. The truth was that Maria was simply outworking everyone else. While they relaxed in the evenings, she practiced techniques she had learned during the day. While they complained about the difficulty of training, she found ways to improve. General Harrison noticed her dedication during his evening rounds. He would often see her in the gym long after official training hours had ended, working on her form or conditioning. He watched her turn every criticism into motivation and every setback into a learning opportunity. Most recruits broke under the constant pressure and scrutiny. Maria seemed to thrive on it. One evening, the general approached her as she finished a particularly intense training session. "Cadet Santos," he said in his characteristic gruff voice, "walk with me." Maria fell into step beside him as they walked across the academy grounds. The general rarely spoke to individual cadets outside of formal instruction, so she knew this conversation would be important. She waited for him to speak, knowing better than to break the silence. "You're different from the others," he finally said. "They're here because they think they're already strong. You're here because you know you need to become stronger." Maria wasn't sure how to respond. She had never heard the general speak so personally to any cadet. "Sir, I'm just trying to do my best." "Your best is better than their best," he replied. "But that's going to make things harder for you, not easier. Excellence makes people uncomfortable, especially when it comes from someone they underestimate. Over the following weeks, Maria noticed that General Harrison's training became more intense for everyone, but especially challenging for her. While other cadets complained about the increased difficulty, Maria realized he was pushing her harder because he saw potential others had missed. He wasn't trying to break her down, he was building her up. The turning point came during a particularly difficult obstacle course exercise. The course was designed to test every aspect of a soldier's physical and mental capabilities. It included rope climbs, wall scaling, weapon handling, and strategic problem-solving under pressure. Most cadets needed multiple attempts to complete it within the time limit. Maria had been struggling with one particular obstacle, a wall that required significant upper body strength to overcome. Time after time, she would get 3/4 of the way up before her arms gave out, and she fell back to the starting position. Other cadets began to gather around, some offering encouragement, but others clearly enjoying her struggle. "Maybe you should try the shorter wall," one of them suggested mockingly. "This one seems a bit too much for you." Maria ignored the comment and prepared for another attempt. She had studied the wall extensively, looking for handholds and techniques that might give her an advantage. She noticed that most cadets tried to power straight up, using brute strength to overcome the obstacle. But Maria had observed that there was a slightly longer route that required more technique but less raw power. On her next attempt, she took the alternate route. Instead of fighting the wall's challenge head-on, she used momentum and precise movements to maintain her progress. The technique was more complex and required perfect timing, but it worked. For the first time, Maria reached the top of the wall. The gathered cadets fell silent. They had expected to see her fail again, but instead they watched her complete the obstacle with a grace and skill that none of them had demonstrated. Even more surprising was her time. She had not only completed the wall, but done it faster than most of the larger, stronger cadets. General Harrison had been watching from a distance. As Maria completed the rest of the course, he found himself impressed not just by her physical improvement, but by her problem-solving approach. She didn't just overcome obstacles through effort alone, she outsmarted them. After the exercise, tensions began to rise among some of the cadets. Maria's success was making others look bad by comparison, and their resentment was becoming harder to hide. The atmosphere during training sessions grew increasingly hostile, with some cadets making pointed comments about favoritism, and others questioning whether the standards were being lowered to accommodate weaker recruits. The situation came to a head during a routine sparring session. Maria was paired with Jackson Wells, one of the largest and most aggressive cadets in their class. Jackson had made no secret of his belief that women didn't belong in combat roles, and he saw this match as an opportunity to prove his point. Unlike previous sparring sessions where opponents had either held back or simply tried to overpower her, Jackson approached the match with genuine hostility. His attacks were harder and more aggressive than anything Maria had faced during training. She quickly realized that this wasn't just a practice match for him, it was personal. General Harrison was supervising the session, but he didn't immediately intervene. Military training was supposed to be challenging, and soldiers needed to learn to handle pressure and aggression. But as the match continued, it became clear that Jackson was taking things too far. Maria found herself on the defensive, using every technique she had learned to avoid Jackson's increasingly violent attacks. The other cadets gathered around, sensing that this was more than a routine exercise. Some cheered for Jackson, caught up in the aggressive display. Others watched nervously, realizing that someone might get seriously hurt. The match reached its climax when Jackson managed to grab Maria and lift her off the ground, intending to slam her down with enough force to end the fight decisively. For a moment, it looked like Maria's smaller size would finally prove to be an insurmountable disadvantage. But Maria had spent months studying leverage and momentum. As Jackson lifted her, she shifted her weight and used his own momentum against him. In a move that surprised everyone watching, including General Harrison, she escaped Jackson's grip and countered with a perfectly executed technique that sent him crashing to the mat. The impact was harder than anyone expected. Jackson hit the ground with enough force to knock the wind out of him, and for several seconds he lay there stunned and gasping for breath. The gathered cadets fell silent, shocked by the sudden reversal they had just witnessed. General Harrison stepped forward to check on both cadets, but his attention was focused primarily on Jackson, who was clearly the more seriously affected by the encounter. As he helped Jackson to his feet, the general's expression was unreadable. Maria stood at attention, waiting for evaluation of her performance. She had defended herself successfully and used proper technique, but she could sense that the intensity of the outcome had surprised everyone, including herself. The power behind her counterattack had been greater than she realized she possessed. Jackson finally caught his breath and got back on his feet, but his demeanor had completely changed. The aggressive confidence he had shown at the beginning of the match was gone, replaced by something Maria had never seen in him before: genuine respect tinged with wariness. General Harrison dismissed the other cadets but asked Maria to remain behind. As the training area emptied, she prepared herself for either commendation or discipline. She had followed proper procedures and defended herself appropriately, but the outcome had been more decisive than anyone had anticipated. "Cadet Santos," the general said once they were alone. "That was an impressive display of technique under pressure." "Thank you, sir," Maria replied, still uncertain about his assessment of the situation. "But I suspect you surprised yourself as much as everyone else," he continued. "Power without control is dangerous, even when it's used in self-defense." Maria realized he was right. In that moment when Jackson had grabbed her, something had clicked into place. All the training, technique, and determination had combined into something more powerful than she had known she possessed. The realization was both thrilling and sobering. "From now on," General Harrison said, "your training is going to change. You've proven you can handle yourself against stronger opponents, but now you need to learn how to control that ability." As they walked back toward the main academy building, Maria reflected on what had just happened. She had spent months proving that she belonged at the academy, but today felt different. Today, she had proven something to herself as well as to everyone watching. She wasn't just surviving the training, she was excelling at it in ways that even she hadn't fully understood. But she also sensed that this was just the beginning. The look in General Harrison's eyes suggested that he had seen something in her performance that would lead to even greater challenges ahead. Whatever came next, Maria felt ready to face it with the same determination that had brought her this far. The evening air was cool as they reached the main building, and Maria could see other cadets through the windows, probably discussing what they had witnessed during the sparring session. Some would respect what they had seen, but others would only become more resentful. Either way, Maria knew that her position at the academy had fundamentally changed. She was no longer the weak girl who didn't belong. She was a soldier who had proven her worth through skill and determination. General Harrison stopped at the entrance and turned to face her one final time before they went inside. "Tomorrow, your real training begins," he said simply. "Everything up to now has just been preparation." As Maria headed to her quarters that night, she carried with her a new understanding of her own capabilities and potential. The next phase of her journey was about to begin, and she sensed it would challenge her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The next morning brought an unexpected change to Maria's routine. Instead of joining the other cadets for regular training exercises, she received orders to report to General Harrison's private training facility. This was a section of the academy that most cadets never saw, reserved for advanced instruction and specialized preparation. As Maria approached the building, she noticed how different it looked from the standard training areas. The equipment was more sophisticated, the environment more serious. This wasn't about basic military preparation anymore. This was where elite soldiers were forged. General Harrison was waiting for her inside, but he wasn't alone. Two other instructors stood with him: Colonel Martinez, a specialist in advanced combat techniques, and Sergeant First Class Thompson, known throughout the military for her expertise in psychological warfare and strategic thinking. "Cadet Santos," General Harrison began, "yesterday's performance demonstrated that you've mastered the fundamentals. Now we're going to find out what you're truly capable of." The three instructors had designed a completely different type of training program. Instead of focusing on basic physical conditioning and standard military procedures, they would be testing Maria's limits in areas that required both physical skill and mental toughness. The goal wasn't just to make her a competent soldier, but to unlock whatever potential they had glimpsed during her confrontation with Jackson. Colonel Martinez explained the first phase of her new training. "We're going to put you in situations where your size and apparent vulnerability will be seen as weaknesses by opponents. Your job is to turn those perceived disadvantages into tactical advantages." Over the following weeks, Maria found herself in training scenarios unlike anything the regular cadets experienced. She practiced infiltration techniques that utilized her smaller frame to access areas larger soldiers couldn't reach. She learned psychological manipulation strategies that allowed her to make opponents underestimate her before striking decisively. Sergeant Thompson focused on developing Maria's ability to read people and situations quickly. In real combat, she explained, your greatest weapon isn't your physical strength or your equipment. It's your ability to understand your enemy better than they understand themselves. The training was exhausting, both mentally and physically. Maria would spend hours practicing techniques, then more hours studying tactical theory and psychological principles. But unlike the grueling basic training that had been designed to break down recruits before building them back up, this advanced instruction felt like unlocking abilities she had always possessed but never fully accessed. Meanwhile, the other cadets continued their standard training program, unaware of the specialized instruction Maria was receiving. Some noticed her absence from regular sessions and speculated about what it meant. Jackson in particular seemed troubled by the change. Since their sparring match, he had been quieter and more respectful, but Maria could sense his curiosity about her new status. During the few times Maria did interact with other cadets, she noticed a significant shift in how they treated her. Word had spread about her victory over Jackson, and opinions were divided. Some cadets now showed genuine respect for her abilities. Others seemed intimidated or resentful, feeling that her success somehow diminished their own achievements. The advanced training intensified when General Harrison introduced live combat scenarios. These weren't the controlled sparring matches or obstacle courses that regular cadets faced. Maria found herself in simulated real-world situations where she had to make split-second decisions under intense pressure. In one exercise, she was dropped into a mock urban environment and told that hostile forces were holding civilians captive. Her mission was to neutralize the threats and extract the civilians without causing any casualties among the innocents. The enemies were played by experienced soldiers who had been instructed to treat the scenario as realistically as possible. Maria's approach to the exercise surprised even her instructors. Instead of attempting a direct assault or following standard rescue protocols, she spent significant time observing the situation and identifying patterns in the guards' behavior. She noticed that their attention was focused on obvious approach routes, leaving blind spots that a smaller, more agile infiltrator could exploit. Her solution was elegant and effective. Rather than engaging the guards in direct combat, she used stealth and misdirection to turn them against each other. By creating false alarms and manipulating their communication systems, she caused confusion that allowed her to extract the civilians while the guards were distracted by threats that didn't actually exist. Colonel Martinez was particularly impressed by her performance review. Most soldiers think victory means overpowering the enemy, he told her afterward. You understand that true victory means making the enemy defeat themselves. As Maria's skills developed, General Harrison began to share more about why he had taken such a personal interest in her training. During one evening session, as they reviewed tactical scenarios, he opened up about his own military experience. I've trained thousands of soldiers, he told her. Most of them were physically stronger than you, many were more naturally aggressive, and some were even more dedicated. But I've rarely seen someone with your combination of intelligence, adaptability, and determination. He explained that modern warfare was changing. Traditional military thinking, which emphasized overwhelming force and superior numbers, was becoming less effective against opponents who used unconventional tactics. The future would require soldiers who could think creatively, adapt quickly, and turn apparent disadvantages into strategic opportunities. You represent a new kind of warrior, he said. One who wins through intelligence and skill rather than just strength and aggression. This conversation helped Maria understand why her training had become so specialized. She wasn't just learning to be a better soldier. She was being prepared for a type of military service that didn't yet officially exist. Her instructors were developing tactics and techniques that might become crucial in future conflicts. The intensity of her training created some unexpected challenges. Maria found herself becoming isolated from the other cadets, not by choice, but by necessity. Her schedule no longer aligned with theirs, and when they did interact, the difference in their experiences made conversation difficult. Some cadets resented what they saw as special treatment. They didn't understand that Maria's advanced training was more demanding and dangerous than anything they were experiencing. They only saw that she had been singled out for individual attention by the academy's most respected instructors. The situation became more complicated when Jackson approached her after one of the few regular training sessions she attended. His attitude toward her had completely changed since their sparring match, but the change wasn't entirely positive. "I know what you did," he said quietly, his voice carrying a mixture of respect and something that might have been fear. "That move you used on me, that wasn't just training. That was something else." Maria wasn't sure how to respond. Jackson was right that her counterattack had felt different, more powerful than the techniques she had been taught. But she didn't fully understand it herself, and she certainly couldn't explain it to him. "I just used proper technique," she said, hoping to defuse the situation. "No," Jackson insisted. "I've been in a lot of fights, and I know the difference between technique and what you did. You didn't just beat me, you could have seriously hurt me if you wanted to." The conversation troubled Maria because Jackson was pointing out something she had been trying not to think about. During that sparring match, there had been a moment when she felt something shift inside her, a surge of power and confidence that went beyond anything she had experienced before. It was both exhilarating and frightening. General Harrison had noticed her confusion about this experience and addressed it during one of their training sessions. "Every warrior reaches a point where they discover their true capabilities," he explained. "The moment when instinct, training, and determination combine into something greater than the sum of their parts." He told her that what she had experienced was normal for elite soldiers, but that it usually took years of combat experience to access that level of performance. The fact that she had reached it so early in her training was remarkable, but it also created responsibilities. "Power without wisdom is dangerous," he warned her. "Your job now is to learn how to control and channel what you've discovered about yourself." This lesson became the focus of the next phase of Maria's training. Instead of just developing new techniques, she began learning how to modulate her responses to different situations. She practiced techniques for de-escalation and restraint, alongside methods for maximum impact when necessary. The psychological aspects of this training were particularly challenging. Sergeant Thompson pushed Maria to understand not just how to fight, but when fighting was appropriate, and when other solutions might be more effective. "A true warrior's greatest victory is the battle they never have to fight," she explained, "but when battle becomes necessary, it should be decisive." As Maria's confidence grew, so did the complexity of her training scenarios. The instructors began putting her in situations where she faced multiple opponents, limited resources, and unclear objectives. Each exercise was designed to test not just her physical abilities, but her judgment and decision-making under extreme pressure. In one particularly challenging scenario, Maria was told that she had been captured by enemy forces and needed to escape from a secure facility. The guards were played by experienced soldiers who knew she was coming and had been instructed to prevent her escape by any means necessary. Maria's approach to this exercise demonstrated how much her thinking had evolved. Instead of attempting to overpower her captors or find a way to sneak past them, she spent time studying their personalities and motivations. She realized that she could use their assumptions about her against them. She pretended to be more injured and helpless than she actually was, encouraging the guards to become complacent about security. She then used information she had gathered about their personal lives and military backgrounds to create psychological pressure that caused them to make mistakes. When she finally made her escape attempt, it wasn't through a dramatic fight or clever evasion. Instead, she had manipulated the situation so effectively that the guards actually helped her leave, believing they were following orders that had never been given. The debrief session after this exercise was particularly intense. General Harrison and the other instructors were clearly impressed by her performance, but they also recognized that Maria had crossed into a new level of capability that required careful management. "You're no longer just a soldier in training," Colonel Martinez told her. "You're becoming a strategic asset. That creates opportunities, but it also creates dangers." He explained that soldiers with her level of skill and intelligence often became targets for recruitment by various military and intelligence agencies. Some of these opportunities would be legitimate and beneficial to her career. Others might lead her into situations that would test her moral principles and personal values. General Harrison added that Maria's training would now include instruction on how to evaluate and respond to such recruitment attempts. "Your value as a soldier is becoming apparent to people beyond this academy," he said. You need to be prepared for the attention that will bring. As if to prove his point, Maria noticed that she was being observed more frequently during her training sessions. Officers she didn't recognize would occasionally appear to watch her exercises, taking notes and speaking quietly among themselves. The attention was flattering in some ways, but it also made Maria uncomfortable. She had entered the military academy with simple goals: to honor her father's memory and prove that dedication could overcome physical limitations. Now she found herself being groomed for roles she didn't fully understand and hadn't originally sought. The pressure intensified when Sergeant Thompson informed her that her performance had attracted attention from military intelligence units looking for recruits with her specific combination of skills. "You have options opening up that most soldiers never see," she explained. "But you also have responsibilities to consider carefully." Maria realized that her journey had reached another turning point. The weak girl who had struggled to complete basic training exercises was gone, replaced by someone with capabilities that surprised even experienced military professionals. But with that transformation came choices about what kind of soldier and what kind of person she wanted to become. The advanced training continued, but now every exercise felt like preparation for decisions that would shape not just her military career, but her entire life. General Harrison and his team were no longer just teaching her to be a better soldier, they were preparing her for leadership roles that would require her to make choices affecting other people's lives. As the second phase of her transformation neared its end, Maria felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She had proven her physical capabilities, developed her tactical intelligence, and learned to control the power she had discovered within herself. But she also sensed that her greatest tests were still to come. The turning point in Maria's military career came on a cold Tuesday morning when she was summoned to General Harrison's office for what she assumed would be another routine training briefing. Instead, she found herself facing a panel of high-ranking officers she had never seen before, their uniforms displaying medals and insignia that spoke of decades of distinguished service. General Harrison sat at the head of the conference table, his expression more serious than Maria had ever seen. To his right sat a woman wearing the uniform of military intelligence, her sharp eyes studying Maria with the intensity of someone accustomed to reading people's deepest secrets. Across from her, a Special Forces colonel reviewed a thick file that Maria assumed contained details about her training and performance. "Cadet Santos," General Harrison began, "your performance over the past months has been exceptional. You've exceeded every expectation and demonstrated capabilities that frankly surprised all of us." The intelligence officer leaned forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected national security. "We've been monitoring your progress closely. Your combination of tactical intelligence, adaptability, and psychological insight represents exactly what we need for certain specialized operations." Maria felt a surge of pride mixed with apprehension. She had worked harder than she ever thought possible to reach this point, but the serious expressions around the table suggested that recognition of her abilities would come with significant responsibilities. The Special Forces colonel opened the file and began reading statistics from her training performance. Her scores in strategic thinking, adaptability under pressure, and psychological manipulation were off the charts. More importantly, her ability to turn apparent weaknesses into tactical advantages had proven consistently superior to soldiers with far more experience. "We have an opportunity for you," the intelligence officer continued. "It would involve immediate graduation from the academy and assignment to a classified project that could significantly advance your military career. However, it would also require you to leave behind everything familiar and accept responsibilities that most soldiers never face." General Harrison explained that the opportunity involved working with an elite unit that specialized in unconventional warfare. Their missions often required soldiers who could operate independently in hostile environments, making crucial decisions without backup or clear communication with command. "The work is dangerous," he admitted, "but it's also exactly what your training has prepared you for. You would be using your intelligence and adaptability to accomplish objectives that traditional military approaches couldn't achieve." Maria listened carefully as they outlined the general parameters of what her new role would involve. She would receive additional specialized training in areas like deep cover operations, advanced psychological warfare, and crisis management. Her assignments would take her to locations around the world where diplomatic solutions had failed and conventional military intervention wasn't practical. The opportunity was everything Maria had worked toward, but it also represented a fundamental change in her life's direction. Accepting would mean leaving the academy before completing the standard program, separating from the other cadets she had trained with, and entering a world of military service that operated according to different rules than anything she had experienced. "We need an answer soon," the intelligence officer said. "This opportunity won't remain available indefinitely, and frankly, candidates with your specific qualifications are extremely rare." General Harrison dismissed the other officers, asking Maria to remain behind for a private conversation. Once they were alone, his demeanor became less formal and more personal than she had seen during any of their previous interactions. "This is a significant decision," he told her. "The work they're offering is important and challenging, but it will also isolate you from normal military life. Once you enter that world, it becomes difficult to return to conventional service." He explained that soldiers who worked in specialized units often struggled with the transition back to regular military roles or civilian life. The skills that made them valuable for unconventional operations sometimes made it harder to function in normal social and professional environments. "I want you to understand what you're choosing," he continued. "This path will develop your abilities to their full potential, but it will also change you in ways that can't be reversed." Maria asked for time to consider the offer, and General Harrison agreed to give her 48 hours to make her decision. As she left his office, her mind was racing with possibilities and concerns she had never previously considered. That evening, she found herself walking the academy grounds, trying to process everything she had learned. The opportunity represented validation of everything she had worked to achieve, but it also meant leaving behind the relatively straightforward path she had originally planned to follow. Her contemplation was interrupted when Jackson approached her near the training facilities. Since their sparring match months earlier, their interactions had been limited and somewhat awkward. But tonight, his expression suggested he had something important to say. "I heard rumors about you meeting with intelligence officers," he said quietly. "Word spreads fast around here, especially when it involves someone like you." Maria wasn't surprised that news of the meeting had leaked. Military academies were notorious for gossip, and a cadet being called to meet with outside officers was exactly the kind of event that would generate speculation. "I can't talk about it," she replied. Which was true both because of security concerns and because she hadn't yet decided what she wanted to share with her fellow cadets. Jackson nodded, understanding the limitations she faced. But then he said something that surprised her. "Whatever opportunity they offered you, you should take it. You don't belong with the rest of us anymore." His words weren't said with resentment or hostility. Instead, Maria heard something that sounded like genuine respect mixed with a recognition of reality. Jackson had realized what she was still struggling to accept, that her capabilities had grown beyond what the standard military track could accommodate. "You're not the same person who started training here," he continued. "Hell, you're not even the same person who beat me in that sparring match. Whatever they want you to do, it's probably something only you can accomplish." That night, Maria barely slept as she considered her options. Part of her was excited about the possibility of using her skills for important missions that could make a real difference in the world. But another part of her was apprehensive about leaving the structured environment of the academy for something unknown and potentially dangerous. The next morning brought an unexpected development that helped clarify her thinking. During what was supposed to be a routine training exercise, an actual emergency occurred that put her decision-making abilities to the test in a real-world situation. A group of cadets had been conducting wilderness survival training in a remote area when severe weather moved in faster than expected. Communication equipment failed, and the instructors lost contact with several teams. Search and rescue operations were being organized, but the weather conditions made immediate response dangerous for aircraft and large search teams. General Harrison called Maria to his office as the situation was developing. "We have cadets potentially in serious danger," he explained. "The standard search protocols will take hours to implement, and the weather window for safe air operations is closing rapidly." He presented her with an unofficial option. "Your training in independent operations and crisis management makes you better qualified than anyone else available to attempt an immediate ground-based search. It would be dangerous, and it wouldn't be an official mission, but it might be their best chance for quick rescue." Maria realized that this was essentially a test of whether she was ready for the kind of independent decision-making that the intelligence opportunity would require. She would be operating without backup, clear objectives, or guaranteed support if things went wrong. "I'll do it," she said without hesitation. General Harrison provided her with the last known locations of the missing teams and the best available weather forecasting information. The rest would be up to her judgment and capabilities. As she prepared for the mission, Maria felt the same sense of focused determination that had carried her through the most challenging training exercises. The search operation required every skill she had developed. She used her knowledge of psychology to predict how the missing cadets might react to the dangerous weather conditions. Her understanding of tactical movement allowed her to navigate the difficult terrain efficiently. Most importantly, her ability to adapt to changing circumstances proved crucial as conditions continued to deteriorate. 6 hours later, Maria returned to the academy with all of the missing cadets. She had located them using reasoning that hadn't occurred to the standard search teams, and she had guided them to safety using routes that avoided the worst of the weather. Her performance during the crisis was flawless, but more importantly, it demonstrated that she was ready for the kind of independent operations that her specialized training had prepared her for. The rescue mission removed any remaining doubts about her decision. When General Harrison asked for her answer to the intelligence offer, Maria didn't hesitate. "I accept the opportunity," she said. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." The intelligence officer who had interviewed her earlier returned to the academy to begin the transition process. Maria learned that she would be leaving the academy within a week to begin advanced training at a classified facility. Her new instructors would include experts in areas she had never even heard of, and her missions would take her to places that didn't appear on any public maps. Before leaving, Maria had one final conversation with General Harrison. He had been more than just an instructor to her. He had been a mentor who recognized her potential when others saw only limitations. "You've exceeded every expectation," he told her. "But remember that your greatest strength has always been your ability to remain true to your principles while adapting to any situation. Don't let the specialized training change who you are at your core." He also gave her advice that would prove crucial in the challenging times ahead. "The work you'll be doing operates in gray areas where right and wrong aren't always clear. Trust your instincts, but also remember that the best solutions are usually the ones that cause the least harm while accomplishing the necessary objectives." As Maria prepared to leave the academy, she reflected on how much she had changed since arriving as the weak girl that everyone expected to fail. She had not only survived the training but excelled beyond what anyone, including herself, had thought possible. But she also realized that her journey was far from over. The specialized training and missions ahead would test her in ways that basic military instruction never could. She would be operating in situations where mistakes could have international consequences, and where success might require her to make decisions that would affect people's lives in ways she couldn't predict. The night before her departure, Maria walked the academy grounds one final time. She visited the training facilities where she had first proven herself, the obstacle course where she had learned to overcome physical limitations through intelligence and determination, and the sparring area where she had discovered capabilities she didn't know she possessed. As she stood in the place where her confrontation with Jackson had changed everything, Maria understood that she was no longer the person who had struggled with that first wall climb or worried about fitting in with the other cadets. She had become someone capable of operations that most soldiers couldn't even imagine, someone trusted with responsibilities that could affect national security and international relations. The transformation was complete. But Maria sensed that her story was just beginning. The real test of everything she had learned and become would come in the classified world she was about to enter, where her decisions would have consequences far beyond personal achievement or military advancement. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, and new opportunities to prove that strength could come from the most unlikely sources. The weak girl was gone, replaced by someone ready to take on missions that would require every skill she had developed and capabilities she had yet to discover. 2 years after leaving the military academy, Maria found herself standing in the shadows of a bustling marketplace in Eastern Europe. Her appearance and demeanor completely transformed from the uncertain cadet who had once struggled with basic training exercises. She wore civilian clothes that helped her blend into the crowd, but her posture and awareness spoke of someone accustomed to operating in dangerous environments. The classified facility where she had received specialized training had been unlike anything she could have imagined. The instructors were former special operations soldiers, intelligence officers, and psychological warfare experts who had operated in conflicts that the public never heard about. They had refined her natural abilities and taught her skills that went far beyond conventional military training. Maria had learned to speak 3 new languages fluently, master advanced surveillance and counter-surveillance techniques, and develop expertise in crisis negotiation and psychological manipulation. More importantly, she had gained experience in making split-second decisions in situations where standard military protocols didn't apply. Her current mission involved tracking down a weapons dealer who had been supplying terrorist organizations with advanced military equipment. Traditional law enforcement and military approaches had failed because the dealer operated in regions where official intervention would create diplomatic complications. Maria's assignment was to locate him and either facilitate his capture or neutralize his operation through other means. The intelligence she had gathered over the past week indicated that the dealer would be meeting with potential buyers in a location that provided multiple escape routes and was surrounded by innocent civilians. A direct assault would be impossible without risking significant collateral damage, and surveillance had proven difficult because the dealer employed security experts who recognized standard intelligence techniques. Maria's approach to the mission demonstrated how much her tactical thinking had evolved. Instead of trying to observe the dealer directly or intercept his communications, she had spent time studying the people in his network, identifying their psychological profiles, personal motivations, and relationship dynamics. She had discovered that one of the dealer's key associates had a daughter attending university in a nearby city. The associate was proud of his daughter's academic achievements and worried constantly about her safety. Maria realized she could use this information to create pressure that would disrupt the dealer's operation without requiring direct confrontation. Rather than threatening the daughter or her father, Maria arranged for the daughter to receive an anonymous scholarship offer that required her to relocate to a safer city immediately. The offer was legitimate and beneficial, but it required the father to choose between his loyalty to the dealer and his concern for his daughter's well-being. When the associate accepted the scholarship offer and relocated with his daughter, the dealer's network lost a crucial component. Without this associate's local knowledge and connections, the planned weapons transfer had to be postponed indefinitely. The disruption gave legitimate authorities the time they needed to develop evidence for official legal action. The mission was completed without violence, without exposing Maria's presence, and without creating diplomatic complications for any government involved. The dealer's operation was neutralized, the terrorist organizations didn't receive their weapons, and innocent people were protected from potential harm. This type of success had become typical for Maria's missions. Her ability to achieve objectives through intelligence and psychological insight rather than force had made her valuable for operations that traditional military units couldn't handle effectively. But the work was also taking a personal toll that Maria was only beginning to recognize. The isolation required for deep cover operations meant that she had limited contact with people from her previous life. She couldn't share details about her work with anyone outside her immediate command structure. And the constant need to maintain false identities made genuine relationships difficult. After completing the weapons dealer mission, Maria was given a brief leave period before her next assignment. Instead of using the time to rest or travel, she decided to visit General Harrison at the military academy. She hadn't seen him since leaving for specialized training, and she felt a need to reconnect with someone who understood both who she had been and what she had become. The academy looked exactly the same as when she had left, but Maria felt like a completely different person walking through the familiar grounds. The training facilities where she had struggled to prove herself now seemed almost quaint compared to the environments where she had been operating. General Harrison was conducting a leadership seminar when Maria arrived, and she watched from the back of the classroom as he taught current cadets about tactical decision-making under pressure. His methods hadn't changed, but Maria now understood the deeper principles behind his instruction in ways that had been invisible to her as a cadet. After the seminar ended, General Harrison invited Maria to his office. The conversation that followed was unlike any they had shared during her time as a cadet. She was no longer a student seeking guidance. She was an experienced operative discussing the realities of specialized military service with someone who understood its implications. "You've changed," General Harrison observed, studying her with the same analytical intensity he had shown during her training. "The reports I've seen about your missions are impressive, but I can see that the work is affecting you in ways that go beyond professional development." Maria realized he was right. The constant need to manipulate situations and people, even for legitimate purposes, had begun to change how she approached all relationships. She found herself analyzing everyone's motivations and vulnerabilities automatically, even in casual social interactions. "The skills you've developed are necessary for the work you do," General Harrison continued, "but they can also become problematic if you don't maintain clear boundaries between your professional and personal life." He explained that many soldiers who worked in psychological operations and intelligence eventually struggled with trust issues and emotional detachment. The same abilities that made them effective in their missions could make it difficult to form genuine connections with other people. "The question you need to ask yourself," he said, "is whether the person you've become is someone you want to remain, or whether you need to find ways to preserve parts of who you were before this work changed you." Their conversation was interrupted when a young cadet knocked on the door, asking for permission to speak with General Harrison about a training issue. As the cadet entered, Maria was struck by how much the girl reminded her of herself during her early days at the academy. Uncertain, determined, and clearly struggling to prove that she belonged. The cadet's problem was familiar. She was having difficulty with hand-to-hand combat training and felt that other cadets were not taking her seriously because of her size and appearance. She wanted advice on how to overcome the physical disadvantages she faced. Maria found herself speaking before General Harrison could respond. "Physical disadvantages are only disadvantages if you try to fight the same way as people who are bigger and stronger than you," she told the cadet. "Your job is to find approaches that turn their assumptions about you into tactical opportunities." The cadet looked confused, so Maria elaborated. "They expect you to be weaker, so use techniques that require precision rather than strength. They assume you'll be defensive, so develop offensive capabilities they won't anticipate. Most importantly, study your opponents more carefully than they study you." As Maria continued offering advice, she realized that explaining these concepts to someone else was helping her reconnect with principles that had guided her own development, but had become clouded by the complexities of her current work. General Harrison watched the interaction with interest, recognizing that Maria was rediscovering aspects of herself that had been overshadowed by her specialized training and mission experiences. After the cadet left, General Harrison made a suggestion that surprised Maria. "I think you should consider taking on a training role here at the academy. Not as a full-time assignment, but as a way to balance your operational work with something that connects you to your original motivations for military service." He explained that the academy had been looking for instructors who could teach advanced tactical thinking and unconventional problem-solving to exceptional cadets. Maria's combination of operational experience and natural teaching ability made her ideal for this role. "Teaching would give you perspective on your own development while helping others avoid some of the pitfalls that come with specialized training," he said. "It might also help you maintain connections to the principles that guided your original military service." The idea appealed to Maria more than she had expected. Her operational work was important and challenging, but it had become increasingly difficult to see how her missions connected to larger purposes beyond immediate tactical objectives. Over the following days, Maria observed several training sessions and spoke with current cadets about their experiences. She was particularly drawn to the students who reminded her of herself, those who were succeeding through intelligence and determination rather than natural physical advantages. She noticed that current training methods, while effective, didn't fully prepare cadets for the psychological pressures they would face in real-world operations. The academy focused on building physical skills and technical knowledge, but there was limited instruction on maintaining personal integrity while operating in morally complex situations. Maria proposed developing a curriculum that would address these gaps. Her courses would focus on ethical decision-making under pressure, maintaining psychological stability during extended operations, and balancing mission effectiveness with personal values. General Harrison enthusiastically supported her proposal, recognizing that Maria's unique combination of operational experience and personal insight could significantly enhance cadet preparation for modern military challenges. As Maria began developing her training curriculum, she found herself reconnecting with the sense of purpose that had originally motivated her military service. Teaching others helped her remember why she had wanted to become a soldier in the first place, to protect people and serve causes greater than personal advancement. Her first class included 15 advanced cadets who had been selected for their potential to receive specialized assignments after graduation. As Maria looked at their faces, she saw reflections of her own journey. Young people trying to prove themselves worthy of opportunities they couldn't fully imagine. Military service will test you in ways you can't anticipate, she told them during her opening lecture. The question isn't whether you'll face situations that challenge your abilities and principles. The question is whether you'll maintain your integrity while adapting to those challenges. She shared carefully selected examples from her operational experience, focusing on decision-making processes rather than specific mission details. The cadets were fascinated by her insights into psychological tactics and unconventional problem-solving approaches. But Maria also emphasized the importance of understanding personal limitations and maintaining support systems that could help them process difficult experiences. Your greatest strength as a soldier will be your ability to accomplish missions while remaining true to your core values, she explained. The teaching role provided Maria with exactly the perspective she had been missing. Helping others navigate the early stages of their military careers reminded her of her own growth and development, while also highlighting aspects of her current work that had become problematic. She began requesting assignments that allowed her to spend part of her time at the academy while continuing her operational duties. This balance proved beneficial for both aspects of her career. Her teaching made her a more thoughtful operative, while her operational experience kept her instruction grounded in practical reality. 6 months after returning to the academy as an instructor, Maria received a mission assignment that would test everything she had learned about balancing effectiveness with integrity. A terrorist organization was planning an attack that would target civilians, but the only way to prevent it involved operations that would require her to compromise some of the ethical principles she had been teaching her cadets. As Maria prepared for what might be her most challenging mission, she carried with her the lessons she had learned from both her operational experience and her return to teaching. She had proven that apparent weaknesses could become strengths, that intelligence could overcome physical limitations, and that success was possible through methods that others might not consider. But she had also learned that true strength came from maintaining personal integrity while adapting to any situation. The weak girl who had once struggled with basic training had become someone capable of operations that could affect international security. More importantly, she had become someone who understood that real victory meant accomplishing necessary objectives while preserving the values that made those objectives worth fighting for. The mission ahead would test whether she could maintain that balance under the most extreme pressure she had yet faced. But Maria felt ready for the challenge, knowing that her journey from weakness to strength had taught her that the most important battles were often the ones fought within herself.